Well, hello again, everyone. It's Tracy with you with the lovely Paris, who's going to share a very interesting birth story, one that I've been aching to get, which is the story of a baby born in the breech position. I had two breech babies myself back in 96 and 98 before a big breech trial came out, which basically gave license for most doctors to go straight to cesarean. Unfortunately, though, we've lost a lot of our skills with breech, and not every breech birth is diagnosed. So it is important that our caregivers don't freak out when they see a bum coming or feet rather than a head, because sometimes those little blighters can turn at the last minute. So thank you, Paris, for coming on. I'm so grateful to you.
Thanks for the opportunity to share my story. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Now, every birth story leads to the next birth and the next birth. And so lovely Paris and her wife, Ellen, Ellen was the first birthing mum in your family. Can you share with us a little bit about that experience? And then we'll go into your birthing experience.
Yeah, and I already got a smile on my face because I think Ellen's was a beautiful birth that I got to witness and was so empowering for me going into my own birth. So our daughter Edie, who's 2 now, was born at Canberra Hospital through the continuity of care program.
Hmm.
So Ellen had one midwife the whole way through, and that really helped our family prepare for our daughter. And I think during that time, we started to really explore what our birth values were, and Ellen started to engage with authors like Rhea Dempsey and
Hmm.
Rachel Reed, and I was reading those as well. So that I guess my birth prep started before I was even pregnant, going through Ellen's process.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Edie was also a breech presentation, which is really interesting. Similar to Elliot, Edie turned at about 38 weeks, so she was head down the whole way, and then uh, last minute she turned. Ellen had a successful ECV, which is mechanically turning the baby from outside the woman's stomach, and so that was successful for Ellen. And then I think about 5 days later, she went into spontaneous labor
Hmm.
with Edie. Um, and yeah, it was just really beautiful birth. Kylie, who was also, so Kylie is my doula and was Ellen's doula as well. Kylie came and to the home, and Ellen birthed at home, labored at home for quite a while. Then we went into the hospital and the birth unit there. Ellen went into the bath, and she wasn't really that keen on the bath. So she basically worked with her own mind and with the support of Kylie and I. Um, she didn't have any vaginal examinations or any medication. She went full natural. And it was just unbelievable for me to watch. Like, I knew that she was a strong woman, and she just worked with herself, worked with the sensations that she was having, really worked with Edie. Like, she talked to Edie throughout the labor, and then had, yeah, beautiful birthed our daughter. And I just, like, I still remember Edie's face when she came out, like, and I was like, this little girl is ready for the world. She just looked so strong. It was just like a really powerful birth
Yeah.
experience for both of us, and it was one of the probably the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed. And at that time, I was like, oh, I do want to experience pregnancy and birth myself, but now I just really want to experience it because I got to witness the
Mm.
transformative power of it, and I was like, I want to do that.
I want one
You
of
know,
those.
yeah, it didn't scare me.
Mm.
I just yeah, I just thought it was incredible. And I guess the preparation that I had done beforehand helped me to be able to hold that. Like, I knew
Yeah.
I wasn't scared of
Yeah.
seeing Ellen in pain or seeing her work through like probably the most challenging sensation she's ever had. I knew what I was seeing and that it was all
Mm.
healthy and positive, and
Mm.
Kylie was there.
Yeah.
confirming that. And yeah, so it was,
So you did some preparation there.
yeah,
You talked about reading Rhea Dempsey, Rachel Reed. These are powerful books that Paris is telling us about, in that they help us to understand really Mother Nature's blueprint and how to create the best conditions for birth to happen, and also the need for advocacy and to push back against other belief systems if that's the way you want to go. You also talked about having continuity of a known midwife and the continuity of a doula. These are very powerful, game changing decisions that you can make when it comes to creating the best conditions and in your preparation. Is there anything else in that preparation sphere that made a big difference to you?
yeah, and I think this sort of goes into my own preparation for birthing Elliot. For me, there was two things that really were game changers in my mind, because it is different when you, all right, I'm pregnant now. This is my own preparation.
Mm,
It was reading Rhea Dempsey's book, and she talks about reframing pain. And I really liked her approach of acceptance of the pain. So,
yeah.
and the power of the pain that really resonated for me personally. As she talks about like endurance athletes and how we really celebrate this in society, and that we don't that doesn't necessarily translate to the birthing woman, and celebrating that
Mm,
unbelievable endurance event. And I come from a sporting background, and that really spoke to me.
mm,
So the reframing of the pain as power and the opportunity for spiritual transformation in that. And then also, I what really benefited me in preparation is knowing my options. So I really wanted to know the details of what would happen, what are the phases, being clear about the routine interventions, and
mm.
having an idea of what I would choose rather than choosing it live whilst you're in labor
Yeah,
was important. So
yeah.
understanding the facts and evidence, and watching births, that I know that's not for everyone, but that really helped me understanding the
Mm,
practicalities. And I had a number of sessions with Kylie, and she talked me through the how the labor actually works, and
yeah.
also she explored some birth values with me. And um, just talking to your partner about it as well was is
Mm,
I would recommend that, so you're both clear and on
yeah.
what the shared values are.
Yeah. You're describing there what's we know to be birth mapping,
Yeah,
which is being really clear on what's important to you and what to do under certain conditions. If A happens, that you'll choose B. If
yeah,
C happens, you'll choose D. And that process of getting really clear and then being able to advocate is I would say, another huge game changer. So you really harness those threads of influence. We can't control this, but we can influence it. And it is an endurance event in for any of those listening who have had experience doing any type of endurance event. It's the ultimate endurance event, and I'll tell you why, because you don't know where the finish line is.
yep,
That's one of the biggest mysteries of birth is you don't know how long you're going to have to be doing it. So you've really got to harness the power of the mind and the ability to just really lean into the experience, and using what you said beautifully from Rhea Dempsey is the acceptance of the process. Yeah. So tell us about your pregnancy with little Elliot and how that unfolded for you.
yeah. So I think I would we're in a same-sex relationship, so we were very intentional about conception. Uh, and when we found out, we were elated. It was great timing, 2 years apart for Elliot and Edie.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think at first I was sort of, even though it was very intentional, it's quite shocking when you're actually pregnant and that it actually worked. So I think the first trimester, it was just navigating those emotions of, wow, this is actually happening. And I get to have this experience too, and just being really grateful for that. And it wasn't until probably about 20 weeks that I picked up the Birthing with Confidence book by Rhea Dempsey. And I just love the way how directly she communicates. And it really like woke me up as like, okay, I have done that planning with Ellen for Edie's birth, but this is my own journey. And
Mm,
I almost need to start again. Like it was helpful to just, that was 2 years ago. Let's reconnect with what I value in birth, what I valued in witnessing Ellen's birth. And that book really helped me. And then that connected me with other birth workers and reading about them, uh, like Rachel Reed, as I mentioned, Dr. Sarah Buckley, which I think you've had on
mm.
this show.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
She she was an author that I really connected with as well. There's a lot of resources out there and a lot of I feel like I had the support of Kylie and Ellen and some of my family members, and then I had the support of this group of women who I'd never met before, but were really collecting through
Mm.
reading and listening to them, and they like held me in that experience as well.
The wise women renegades.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, so I think my preparation really kicked into gear around
Mm,
20 weeks. I tend to over prepare, and I'm one of those people that can get pulled into over researching, I guess, and creating a bit of like an anxiety frenzy. So I just knew that about myself. So I
mm,
wanted to pace myself because I think pregnancy is a bit of an endurance event as well. So
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So, as you got closer to the birth, you discovered little Elliot's positioning. Tell us about that.
Yeah. And I should say that I was in the same program as Ellen. So
Oh, you had the
same
continuity.
midwife,
Oh,
continuity of care.
brilliant.
Yeah, it was great. I really love my midwife. She's awesome, and she was through the whole thing, even though she wasn't at the birth in the end, which I'll
Mm,
talk about. But yeah, 38 weeks, went in for a routine appointment, and I remember lying down. I was pretty used to these appointments by then, just going through the motions. And Amelia, my midwife, was like, "Oh, that's okay. So he's not. That just feels a bit. Let me just have another little feel." She was a bit shocked as well, I think, but she was super calm. And then she was like, "Oh, I think he's breech." And I looked at Ellen and we just laughed because the exact same thing had happened to Ellen. Like it was
You
tech.
two are peas in a pod, aren't you?
I know.
Funny.
Yeah, so we were just sort of like, wow. But I think I was more because we had literally gone through the motions previously for Ellen, we knew
Mm,
exactly what was ahead of us.
yeah.
So that was comforting. I think I was just in, all right, what are the next steps mode? And because I knew that the ECV was an option as well, that
Mm,
the doctor could mechanically um, turn the baby, I was thinking of that and that was successful and positive with Ellen, so it could be the case with me. So I wasn't in panic mode like I was when we found out that Ellen had a breech presentation. I was just kind of in disbelief that it happened again. Yeah.
and
And
so
so
did you lined up for an ECV?
yeah, so then you go in and you have a ultrasound with the obstetrician just to confirm breech presentation. Then you have another ultrasound through a proper clinic and they confirm exact breech presentation, which
Right.
is important for them
Mm,
when conducting the ECV. They just want to check
yeah.
positionings.
So, what Paris is talking about there are different types of breech presentation. The one we hope for is the frank breech, where the legs are right out of the way, they're up near the head. They're sort of like doing a tuck dive type presentation. But sometimes they can have their little knees bent and there can be feet presenting down near the doorway and other types of breech presentation. So, that is an important thing to ascertain. So, what was little Elliot?
So this is the interesting part. He at the end he was frank. So
Yeah.
he came out frank. But when they did the ultrasound, he was incomplete breech. So one leg was up, bent. Oh, sorry, one leg was up in like a frank
Yeah.
breech position, and the other one was sort of tucked under his tummy.
Right.
So this was a big red flag for Canberra Hospital. They were very fixated on the incomplete breech position.
Mm.
The doctor that I so so I did the ultrasound, then I'm in the go back to the hospital for the ECV, and I'm feeling pretty hopeful and positive about it because I've witnessed a successful one. I know what it's about. The doctor comes in, a more junior doctor, and said, "Oh, how do you feel about a cesarean?" And at that point, I had really established that I wanted to have a vaginal birth. It was really important to me for a number of reasons. And so that was devastating
Mm.
information to receive at that point. And she would the doctor was quite surprised that I had such a emotional response to receiving that news.
Mm.
I think it was pretty routine for them if there's a breech position that goes straight into cesarean.
Yeah.
That she didn't even want to attempt the ECV. And I sort of interrogated that a little bit, like the cesarean aspect of it, and also why they couldn't do an ECV. Because I had done my research on the statistics, um, and I had just happened to had listened to breech birth um, stories before. I guess also when Ellen found out that there was a breech presentation, I was more curious about that. So I went into it knowing I can do a vaginal breech birth if the ECV doesn't work. So I had my stats behind me, and I interrogated in a respectful way why the hospital policy was recommending a cesarean. She was very much focused on listing the risks of a vaginal breech birth. There were no mention of any risks with cesarean, which I found unhelpful. I think it's important to present the risks of
Mm.
both sides so the woman can make an informed decision. And it became pretty obvious, and the doctor admitted that the reason that they would not recommend a vaginal breech birth is because they don't have the training at the hospital. And I found that really difficult to accept because
Yeah.
I really had an internal sense of knowing that I could do this.
Mm.
And yeah, I found it difficult to accept that it was because they weren't trained. And also, interestingly, the doctor presented vaginal breech birth in a really fear-based way because her personal experience of them were when they went really badly. And if you think about it, if they're not offering planned vaginal breech births
Mm.
and all the ones that they are seeing are unexpected,
Yeah.
coming to the hospital, they see a foot, they thought it was head down, they don't have the training. Of course, they're going to be
Yeah.
more adverse outcomes than if you have the training and
Exactly.
it's planned and known.
Yeah.
And when I say planned, I still mean spontaneous labor.
Yeah.
But everyone knows that this is, and the woman knows, and there's a plan around that.
There needs to be more work done in this field because the breach trial itself has been shown to be highly flawed in its
Yeah.
conclusions and the way that it was laid out. It was a very big study, which is why it was adopted very quickly. But the convenience, I guess, of cesareans made it more palatable to just go to that path. But in doing so, doctors lost their training. And I think that's actually medically negligent that they aren't trained in dealing with breech babies because not every breech is diagnosed. And that in itself is highlighting a really big hole in their education and their experience. They need to see more of them. And I think there is a push in that direction now was very, very poor. For most research, it takes like something like 10 to 16 or 17 years for it to actually be made applicable, like to be playing out in hospitals as evidence-based practice. But this was a study that was adopted very, very quickly. And I think because of the convenience of cesareans.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mm,
like you said, there's been studies, a lot of studies that have come after it that have shown the adverse outcomes that the Turnbridge trial showed between comparing cesarean and vaginal breech births was actually not as accurate as they thought. And
mm,
so there's evidence to the contrary now. And if
yeah,
anyone's interested, there's a great organization called Breach Without Borders, because it's not only an Australian thing,
yeah,
it's in the UK. It sort of had a global impact, this.
yeah. I think it was a Canadian study. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting for me having Paris on is I had two breech babies, vaginal breech, very straightforward births, no complexity whatsoever, back in 96 and 98. And I was supported by a doctor who felt that it was a better way to go because the recovery of cesareans harder and that there are risks with cesareans as well. He was much more balanced in the way he presented. My first doctor wasn't. The one I sacked, he just was very fear based and projected stories of fear, and it just didn't gel with me. It's like, what are you telling me about this? It's not helpful. Don't, and I ended up knowing he wasn't the right doctor. Went to, as a result of advice from my childbirth educator, had a second opinion from another doctor in another hospital, and he was like, well, let's see if we can turn him. I didn't even know that was an option. The first doctor never even presented an
Mm.
ECV as an option. And then when he tried to turn him, he was so big and heavy and well engaged, he couldn't get him out of my pelvis. He was really low. And he said, your baby's in a great position to be born vaginally. I can see the feet are out of the way. The cord seems to be short. Like he could see that it was a really good option and was very confident in that. And then my midwife, who I ended up having through the whole birth, was very, very confident with breech. And she worked with me for both of those breech babies. And yeah, the first one of the things they worry about with breech is heads getting stuck. And she had a hands-off approach
Yeah.
with the breech, and she was very, very comfortable. My first one came out in one contraction. Once I cleared that bum, I just pushed him out. The second one came out in three stages: his hips, and then his shoulders. And I have this amazing photo of his head still inside. And
Oh,
then
that's cool.
very, yeah, it was
The
really cool.
breach photos are
And
amazing.
they are. And then, yeah, I remember her leaning down to me and saying, how about we get that head out? She was so calm. And I just pushed spontaneously. I don't think I even contracted at the time. It's hard for me to remember, but he just popped, the head came out, hands off, just let it all happen. I was in two really good positions. The first position I was on a birth stool, and the second position I was sort of in the prone position.
I did birth stool as well. Amazing. I love
Yeah,
birth stool. Yeah.
yeah. So nice, good physiological position to open up the hips, and so it can. We've really got to take the fear out of breech and start to replace that with competence, understanding how to head complexity off at the gate, how to protect heads from flexing, that type of approach. And when I went to the home birth conference a couple of years ago, they had a beautiful doctor from the States who's working on helping to other doctors to reclaim those skills. And he showed us some of the things and the signs that they can look for and what to, like, how to manage those sorts of presentations and how babies can emerge. So yeah, we do need to change this. It's why I love having your story on, because it's very
Yeah.
confidence building.
Yeah. You can do it. Like you can do a vaginal breech.
Yeah.
The- It's interesting actually, as you were talking, the difference in the medical practitioner's feelings about it is quite stark. So you'd think,
Mm,
okay, you have one group of doctors who will not do it. They've got a lot of fear around it. You'd think the next step is there's a group of doctors who will do it, but it will be tightly managed. There'll be an
mm,
epidural, injuries. that's not the case. The group
Mm,
of doctors that supported me were hands off.
yeah, yeah. That was
So
always the saying with breech, hands off.
yeah, I'll go
Interesting.
into it, but
We
there
got to
are a
get
couple
into
of
that. Yeah.
maneuvers, but they're not intrusive.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. To protect that head from flexing.
yeah.
So you're coming back to where you're at. You had this doctor who wasn't presenting both sides of the story, was going straight to cesarean. What happened then?
I had a really, yeah, I interrogated the reasons around and, found that it was more
Mm,
about training. So I said, could I please speak to someone more experienced in
mm,
breech births? And she found a doctor. Apparently, he's the one obstetrician at Canberra Hospital that is comfortable doing a breech.
one in
Yeah,
a dirty big hospital like that,
yeah,
big teaching hospital. That's a bit sad, isn't it?
yeah.
Mm,
So I could sense that he was confident, but he was in within a system that wasn't supporting him. So
right.
he said he would do a breech vaginal birth, but I would have to take the risk that he would be there on the day. And he was going on holidays. And so I think, yeah, I think he was sort of saying without saying that he'd do it. And then
So
he ended up,
the ECV was off the table at that point, or
no,
did you?
then he did the ECV.
Right.
So
Okay.
one of the two reasons that the original doctor didn't want to do the ECV was that there was a nuchal cord present, so a nuchal
Hmm.
cord around his neck, and
Right.
the incomplete breech position.
Yeah.
Neither of those the doctor had any concerns with, and I'd done my research and understood the risks, and the nuchal cord wasn't an issue. So it was just the one nuchal cord. He attempted the ECV and it was unsuccessful. But I think this is really important because I had felt heard by him and I had the opportunity to do the ECV, my whole mood changed. It was one of being vulnerable and not heard and not having the opportunity to do what I wanted to do, to, okay, we'll have a crack at that. Even though at the end of the day, I left with him still in the same position, they were very different pathways. And I felt really heard by the
Mm,
other doctor, and that made me,
wow. I
yeah.
love that you've said that. This is so important because, and for any doctors listening, birth nerds, people who work in this field, um, this is a really important point. Women's voices need to be heard in through the whole process, and their feelings around this stuff respected. And sometimes, medical professionals can be a little bit efficient or a bit discounting, and also even look at you like you've grown a second head. Well, why do you feel that way? It's like to them, it's such an obvious thing, but for us, it's a journey into awakening into the motherhood, the mother spirit. And so there's a lot of very strong, powerful emotions going on in there. And women have to go through the process of having a vision, having a sense of how they want to go about doing this, and then dealing with the very real reality that this is not something we can control. We're literally walking into the mystery. And a woman's ability to get on board with what's happening is an important part of this pathway. And when it happens too quickly, with lack of respect, with projection of fear, which then, frightens her. It's really poor management. You can get a woman to cooperate just by purely being clear, concise around the information that and let go so that she can come to terms with that and make a decision. And if it's not the decision you want, too bad, she's the boss.
Yeah,
That's a
beautiful.
very, very important thing. So, Paris, coming back to your story, a really important part of you being able to get on board with what you ultimately chose to do, which I'm so excited to get into the rest of the story. But I want to touch on this because I think it's an important piece. You started to recognize by talking to that consulting doctor who listened to you, who had more confidence, who believed in what it was that you were choosing. helped you to feel more yourself. And then there's a part of your journey of walking into the mystery where you had to come to terms with the idea that you actually might end up having a cesarean. How did you manage that?
That's it. That's exactly right. I love that, walking into the mystery. That's beautiful. So yeah, I came out of the hospital, we went home, Ellen and I had a conversation, and you're exactly right. I had this hope that I could have a vaginal birth that I
Mm,
felt from the doctor. But then there were parts of me that wanted to start going through the process of acceptance for the cesarean.
wow.
And
Okay.
I had a lot of grief come up. I was
Mm,
crying to my wife, and I started to the original doctor's voice is in my head, because she actually said to me, no one will do a breech vaginal birth for you with the incomplete position. So her voice was in my head. So yeah, I was navigating a lot of information. She had told me that there's a breech clinic at Westmead Hospital and that they might help you, but she said, oh, I doubt they will. And I thought that was pretty unnecessary to
mm. Well, she doesn't know, so
get
she shouldn't
her.
even make a comment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I at the time hadn't, because I am a bit of a birth nerd, I like that phrase, and I knew that there was a, not a breech clinic, but there was someone at in Sydney called Dr. Bissett's, who I'm sure you know,
I
who
do, Andrew Bissett. Yeah.
specialises in breech births. So I knew that there were people out there that would do it. And the doctor actually gave me the number of someone from Westmead Hospital. So I called both the Westmead Hospital and Royal Women's, where Dr. Bissett's was. And I then found out that he had retired. And I spoke to both of those, the head midwives there, and that was amazing. They were so confident in my ability to do it. The Sam, who's the head midwife at Royal Women's, her the conversation I had with her had a real impact on me. And I spoke to a few women in the lead up who were sort of like, absolutely, you can do this. And those voices were really, I really held on to. They were really important.
Mm,
And after talking to both of them, I realized, yeah, I really want to go to Westmead Hospital. And I still had this hope that they would do it for me. Um, and I had lots of chats with Kylie as well, my doula. So I'd say, yeah, I couldn't have done it by myself. It was really important to have
mm,
those wise women around me,
yeah.
even though I had this internal knowing that I could do it, and this real strong motivation and desire to do it.
Mm.
The women sort of carried me there.
Yeah, that I will come in there. You're raising a memory for me when I was facing my first breach of reading Ina May Gaskin's Spiritual Midwifery, and she had heaps of breach stories in that book, and I read them so vigorously because, and I think your point is right. We have to have people around us who believe in the choices that we're making, who can hold space for that potential reality. Because if we're trying to do it ourselves, and I've said this when I've coached other women trying to birth at Canberra, not having confident caregivers, not being surrounded by people who can, you know, I guess project that confidence around the birthing woman, it's a really hard journey. And I think your point there is spot on. Having other voices in contradiction to some of the, people who don't believe that breech is a good idea and who would go straight to cesarean, we it helps us to understand that there's more than one way to look at this. That was the biggest shock I had when I had one doctor saying one thing and another doctor who said the exact opposite, made me go, oh, okay, there's no one way to do this. And you people have different realities, different levels of fear, different training, expertise. And therefore, you will create a different reality because as humans, we are creators of our reality and how we perceive and believe in the world. And you can have all the evidence in the world about something being safer done this way rather than that way. But if a person feels drawn to doing it that way instead of the other way, sorry, I'm getting confused here, but it's the personal journey that is the most important thing to tune into. What is your path inviting you to learn, feel, be, do, experience? What is your inner sense around that? So were you able to tap into that? Like you had other people who were giving you confidence that yes, this could be a reality worth pursuing. What was it in you, Parris, that gave you that sense of, okay, we're going to go down that path?
I just knew the transformational potential of
Right.
having a natural physiological birth, which I'd really explored with Kylie
Yeah.
and with reading all of those authors. For me, and witnessing Ellen, my wife as well, I think birth is such a spiritual opening, and I've been exploring my spiritual side the last few years, and I think it just is the culmination of all of those really hard times in life, and whether that's mental health or physical health struggles. It's this really clear demonstration of the impermanence of it and the
Yeah.
passing of it and the empowering nature of it.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to experience spontaneous labor, and I wanted to experience I mean, I don't have a problem with the word pain because it's a pain in a positive way for me,
Mm,
like a really hard endurance event. Um, so yeah, I just knew the transformational power of it, and it turned out that that was all the case. Like,
yeah. And you was led on some level, some force was driving you down that path.
yeah,
Because at what point would you have let go of that vision, that dream, that ideal, and moved to and had a cesarean? Did you have a line that you would have crossed and gone the other way?
yeah, it would have. So I was willing to take it to the point where it needed to be an emergency cesarean.
Right. So you were happy to go into a labor
Yeah,
and then be okay with a cesarean. How did you get on board with that? Because I think that is a very important journey to make, is this idea of being in control enough to make decisions, to surround yourself by the right people, to do all that you can to support and promote the likelihood of that birth going down a particular path. But part of that is being able to adapt and accept if at the end you get to the gate and you need to turn left, you need to go from plan A to plan B and sometimes even plan C.
yeah,
Um,
that's
how
good.
did you get on board with the idea of having a cesarean and being okay?
Yeah. So for me, the birth values were could be applied to a cesarean, and I started to explore how that would be the case.
Nice. Yeah.
So the doc, so Dr. Pesher, who is the head of the breech clinic at Westmead, who is my doctor in the end, and I'll get into that, said to me that it's 30% chance of an emergency cesarean. Like
Mm,
that's the
yeah.
statistic that we're working.
Just quite low.
So yeah, that's at Westmead, yeah,
Mm,
hospital, yeah. Yeah, if you think about, I think, I mean, this includes elective cesareans, but I think it's around 30-40% at Canberra Hospital cesarean rate for a Catholic birth. I think that includes elective cesarean, so might
mm.
not be
Actually,
correct.
it's been up around 42%. So I don't know if
That's
they're still hovering around that, but yeah, we've had some of the highest cesarean rates in Canberra in the country.
wow, yeah.
Mm.
So
Anyway,
I started to think how my birth values could be applied to a cesarean.
say
So
more about this. I'm really interested in this because I think where we're going now is an important part of the preparation to going down any type of birth experience where we've got to be able to roll with what our path, how our path unfolds. How did you get on board with that?
So it was articulating in my mind. So what are my birth values? It's being heard,
Hmm.
so which we've gone through, understanding all of the information. So if I had a clear idea of how the cesarean was going to go, so like it was important for me to know, okay, what kind of anesthetic would be available.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, maternally assisted cesarean would be more in line with my birth value. So that's lifting the
Mhm.
baby out. I
Yeah.
wanted to be as awake as I could be to experience that. And even visualizing it makes it less scary because there was a
Mm.
fear for me in having that major abdominal surgery and as
Mm.
well. So, and also hearing stories about really beautiful cesareans
Yeah.
started to get on board in that way of, hey, this could be a really beautiful experience still if there's an element of maternally assisted birth. If I can see his face as he's lifted up, really starting to actually visualize the beauty of a cesarean where the woman's heard. And so I think that I did go down that path. And I think that
Yeah.
was, I think you make a really good point. Um, that not that this was your point, but for me, my interpretation of it was like opening myself up
Yeah.
to the pathway and how I can still hold on to those values.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's so wise. I love that you've said it like that. And what you're saying, Paris, is what should be evident in any birth, whether it be vaginal birth, assisted vaginal birth, cesarean birth. That's why I focus less on the birth and more on the activation of the mother, as well as creating the right conditions for it to be beautiful and transformational, regardless of what, pardon me, regardless of what doorway that baby comes out of, whether they come through the vagina or out the sunroof. It's still a beautiful moment of a soul coming into the world when we choose to see it that way. The people
Yeah,
listening to this are probably going, for God's sakes, get on to the birth. We want to hear about the
I know.
birth. We've taken a detour, sorry.
Yeah. I'll just quickly
Sure,
say
go.
one thing on that. There was something that I read in Rachel Reed's Rite of Passage book that really shifted my perspective on birth.
Hmm.
Because I was so focused on natural physiological birth, I started to notice that there was shame coming up for me if I didn't have it, like the
Right,
fear of the
right.
shame.
Yeah.
Um, she said something really awesome where in society, it seems like the pendulum has swung sometimes too far the other way
Mm,
in our culture, and there's sort of like a culture set up that's like physiological birth at all costs, and there's an element of shame of not having that.
yeah,
And I think the most feminist thing we can do is honor the choices of women when
yeah,
they've got full understanding of the risks on both sides. And if that's a planned cesarean, you know, that could be a really beautiful experience for that woman. So that shifted
yeah.
and I sort of released some of that
Mm,
potential shame if I didn't have that
yeah.
natural physiological birth.
Jane Hardwick Collins,
Yeah,
which is a beautiful podcast episode I did. It's currently out when we're recording this. And she talked about the rite of passage as being a transformational process. It's not just related to a particular outcome or things looking a certain way,
yeah,
it's the transformation that
yeah.
is the most important part of this process. And that's what Mother Nature is demanding of us. And it's not every woman's destiny to have a physiological birth, but it doesn't mean it can't be a transformational process.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So listen to
beautiful. You better talk about the birth now.
yeah.
How did it
Well,
unfold? Well, where are we at? You've decided
yeah. So
your
we're off to
keggers.
Westmead.
Yeah,
We're off to
cool. Tell
Westmead
us about
Hospital.
that.
We've made the decision to go there. My parents are with us looking after Edie. So that was really nice. Have an appointment with Dr. Pesha and the breech clinic team there. And I really like him straight away. He
Mm,
is. presenting both. He's not evangelical about a vaginal breech birth either, even though he's
Mm.
offering it. He's presenting all the risks to me on both sides of cesarean and vaginal breech birth. He was very patient with all of my questions. I had a list of questions for him in terms of statistics, and I went in there really informed by that point of what a breech vaginal birth was.
Which I'm
He,
sure he loved.
do you think so?
Oh, 100%, because what you're doing there is you're taking responsibility. It's not all on them. Sometimes
Yeah,
women can walk into their caregivers and just go, okay, do your thing, get this baby out of me.
yeah, that's
And they're the
true.
sort of people, when things don't go right, are sending them off to the law courts because
Yeah,
they've let go of responsibility. So any woman who does this is actually owning her experience and her birth process. Mm.
I looked it up. Yeah, that makes sense. And he did say to me, he said, "Oh, you have a really good chance of a successful vaginal delivery because of your motivation,
Mm. Yeah.
because you're highly motivated." And what was interesting to me is that he wasn't that as concerned about the position.
Hmm.
Um, so whilst Canberra Hospital was really fixated on this incomplete birth position, they did multiple, like Westmead did multiple ultrasounds, like just bedside ultrasounds on me. And baby's legs were moving all the time. And in the end, his legs went up and he was in the
Yeah.
perfect position. And I remember listening to a discussion with Dr. Bissetts who said something similar. Their legs move all the time.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
uh, so I think after that, after meeting Dr. Pesher, I felt even more confident about doing a vaginal breech birth. And at that point, I could then nest because I was sort of like, where am I going to birth? Who's going to take me? And I was just holding it in.
Mm.
And I was
Because you
39
were,
weeks. So
how were you? 39?
yeah.
Wow, yeah.
And and he did say, oh, look, I think it's worth attempting another ECV. But similar to your experience, like baby's head was like, sorry, bum was really down in the pelvis. There was
Mm.
just, and I just remember feeling like proud of Elliot for just sticking to his position and being like, this is how he wants to be born. Let's do
Yeah.
this. And so then after the unsuccessful ECV, I knew that it was at Westmead Hospital. They were going to support me to do a vaginal breech birth. And there was no extra fuss around me.
Mm.
I felt like I was just having a cephalic birth in a different hospital. There was no, okay, we need to manage this, we need to manage that. They did say to me, so some things that they did say to me were, we like we like the woman to come in, I think it was like 2 in 10 contractions. And we do like continuous CTG monitoring.
Hmm.
That was what would make them feel comfortable with a breech birth. And we did ask about one thing that I was concerned about is, and Dr. Pesher recognized his concern straight away, is that these sort of interventions, for lack of a better word, were going to be used as an excuse to send me off to a elective cesarean. So I was coming at this with this defend, almost trying to defend and protect the birth that I wanted, but I relaxed that after talking to Dr. Pressure and realizing that he really wanted the same outcomes as me.
Mm.
So then I waited. We're staying at an Airbnb in Parramatta, and then it was, I think, 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks until I started feeling labor. So I end up going into labor, going into the hospital at 40 plus 4.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, so it took a while for my body to sort of relax. And I remember being like, okay, I just want to settle in Sydney for a bit before I go into labor. Like, and I did. And then, yeah, I had one of those. on and again, off again, early labor stages.
Hmm.
And so I think I started feeling some like period like pain a couple of days out from when I birthed him. And it would ramp up at nighttime and then go away during the day. But I was feeling really excited about that,
Yeah.
starting to
It's
feel some.
typical of most mammals.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we often go into labor at night because it's quiet and
Mm.
secluded and all those beautiful conditions that cause a mother to feel protected. And then the daylight comes, it's like, no, no, we're going to stop now.
Yeah.
Which can be hard because you can get very tired. How did you maintain your energy levels?
I was really supported to just relax during the day
Mm,
and sleep. So I
yeah,
was able to sleep during in between contractions, which there was a big gap between them.
yeah, right.
So I was able to sleep, but honestly, I didn't get much sleep. That was something. It really labor teaches you so many things about acceptance as well, like accepting that you're going to go into active labor, sleep deprived and not in physical peak condition. If you run a marathon or do any other full-on endurance event, you've got your diet plan, you've had your sleep,
Mm,
hopefully, and you don't necessarily get that for labor, and that's okay. Like you'll still do it.
yeah.
Um, and that's something that I'd learned through Ellen's labor. And she was really supporting me with those affirmations because I started to get fixated on, like, I started to get impatient.
Mm,
And
mm,
I started to think, oh, I'm going to be one of these women who goes to 42 weeks with like on and off again labor. And what does this mean for breech? Like, I don't want them to induce me. I did start to have that narrative
yeah.
running in my head. And Ellen was just really supportive and reassuring me that this is normal.
And every contraction is contributing to the final outcome.
Yeah,
So it's always important to remember that. Even if it doesn't appear like there's apparent progress, it's all part of the softening, releasing. There's so much stuff going on in early labor, and we measure it in terms of dilation. That's very poor thinking. You want to just trust the process in that
yeah,
space. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So when did you get to the point where you were able to go into the hospital?
So on the Thursday, during the day, things had started to ramp up during the day. So the first sort of full day of like
Yeah.
labor. And then all of a sudden, uh, things went from like 20-minute contractions, like, sorry, not 20-minute long, but spaced 20-minute apart
Mm.
and going for about a minute to, oh my God, this is like back to back almost. Like it
Wow.
really switched. And I remember Ellen, she went out to get the family some dinner and thinking, oh, Paris has still got a number of hours. Like she's in the shower, she's okay, came back. And she looked at my face and she was like, oh no, I've left it too late. She was like,
Oops.
wow. Things moved really after having, very intense contractions, but 20 minutes
Mm.
apart or 15, 20 minutes apart to, okay, it's back to back now. And like, there's not a position that I'm comfortable in. So she quickly organized my parents. I had this like beautiful moment with my mum actually. So I didn't want to be observed at all by my parents during labor and all by my daughter. Just wanted to have Ellen around, and they were really respectful and supportive of that. But I had this intuition to like call my mum into the room before we went to hospital, and I just gave her a big hug, and I felt like the like matriarchal lineage within that hug and
Oh,
just like that power.
got the
Um,
goosebumps.
yeah, it was awesome. And just like the handing of the
The
baton type
baton.
of thing.
Oh,
And I just, for the first time, I cried and it just released something for that
yeah.
next
Wow.
stage. And I felt like I could be that little girl for a moment. and be held by my mum. And
Mothers need mothering.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and that was sort of the first
wow.
point of that. Oh, I should mention that Kylie was on a trip to Bali at this point, so she couldn't be there. She was really bummed about that. But yeah, she supported me the whole way, but wasn't there for the birth in the end, which
Mm,
is sad. But so it was Ellen and I jump in the car, Westmead Hospital's 10 minutes away. I can't even sit down. I'm just like the contractions were just immense, which was difficult in the car. We get to the hospital and I must have been pretty close to transitioning at that stage. I can't really remember much, just this urgency to get to the hospital. Um, and then we get to the birth unit, and it was a pretty confronting atmosphere because so far I had visualized my birth in this beautiful birth unit in Canberra with a beautiful bath and like dim lights, and I'd already experienced it because Ellen had birthed there, to this like quite clinical old hospital with lots of women. I could hear like I could hear women birthing, which was like confronting considering I was about to experience that. And Ellen did her best very quickly to like dim the lights, put these like electric
mm,
candles on just to make the setting really nice. And I remember the midwife who was in the room when we arrived started to really engage with me in like asking me questions that I couldn't answer. And we already had planned, Ellen and I, that I would not answer any questions. Like Ellen would answer them for me, and she was so across everything that she'd be able to, and she could talk to me as well, but any communication was like done through Ellen. Um, so that I wasn't affected by any I was it limited how affected I'd be by the midwife in whatever mood they were in, or because they were unfamiliar to us, which was a really good strategy because we had quite an anxious midwife
mm,
when we arrived. She um, was concerned that my waters had broke in the shower and she wanted to do a speculum, which was strange considering I was obviously like almost transitioning and like ready to push this baby out. Um, and Ellen did a really great job of just like containing the midwife whilst I went into the shower. The shower was my happy place. That provided the well, happy place is a stretch, but it provided the most relief.
yeah.
And just getting down on the ground, I was like kneeling a lot and wanted to like connect with the ground. Um, and it was really intense, like the most intense experience of my life. And I was just going through the affirmations that I had, like one what that I kept on saying was that this moment is not too big for me, which that I really connected with. And then the midwife called the doctor into the room, and the doctor said, she's keen. She said to me, she's like, "You're doing so well." And I remember just like that. It's amazing the importance of language in that birth setting. Like when I arrived, the midwife took away my confidence straight away. I thought something's going wrong. What's happening with my like waters? Like why do I need to have this intervention? And then all of a sudden, this all this doctor says is like you're doing really well, and it changes
Yeah.
my perception. So that was I really appreciated that doctor.
Mm,
And then Ellen came in and said, "Oh, the doctor would like to do a vaginal examination. How do you feel about that?" And I felt really happy about that. I felt I really wanted one to get a sense of how far I was along. And Ellen later told me that she said to the doctor, like whilst I was in the shower, "Hey, Paris is like, it's really intense for Paris right now. So if it's like only 2 or 3 centimeters, can you make sure you deliver it in a really respectful, positive way?" Like, and the doctor was like totally on board. And so then getting on my back was really hard, but I got on my back. And she was really quick actually with the examination. And she was like, "Oh, you're fully dilated. We've got to
oh,
call." We've got to call Dr. Pesha. And Ellen, like, I remember seeing Ellen like behind the doctor, and Ellen like did a fist pump. She was like, "Yes, you were amazing." Um, and I was like, I remember being like relieved, but like, wow, how much. I really like what you said before about the endurance event where you don't know when it's going to end. I thought
Yeah,
that's just such an amazing way to put it. And so even though I was fully dilated, I still you don't know how long you're going to push for.
yeah, exactly. It's still mystery.
Still mystery, yeah. So then I'm getting a sense like I can actually do this. Like my confidence is building, but I am going through transition and I'm saying things down and like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, is this going well? Like, and Ellen, yes, you can do this. Like, this is like this battle of like, can I do this?
Yeah.
Wow, this is the most intense thing I've ever experienced.
I call
And
that the
then,
cracking of the shell from the woman
yeah,
into the mother. It's
yeah,
you want to get off the bus, but you know you can't. There's only one way through it, and that's through it. And so what has to happen is your shell has to crack to what you think you can do, to what you actually can do.
yeah,
Very important part, that transition that we often identify, not always, but we often identify, and it's that I don't want a baby anymore. I want to go home. Give me the drugs. I can't do this. These are all typical transition behaviors because it's the woman questioning herself. And what she needs at that point is reassurance. Just, oh,
mm,
I used to say as a doula, I know you can't do it, darling, but you're doing it and you're doing it beautifully.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's,
Ellen was saying that to me. You're doing
yeah,
it. Doing it.
yeah. So
It's
you would have then had to have get into a position for birthing this baby. How did that play out?
so at this point I was on my knees on the floor, holding onto the bed. And then the midwife made a really helpful suggestion that I actually get up on the bed and hold onto the back of the bed.
Hmm.
So I really felt like I needed to get leverage. I wanted to
Yeah,
hold and anchor myself.
something. Yeah, yeah.
And at this point, Dr. Pesha had come in and he was just looking at the CTG. He was super calm, just hands off, just observing me. And
Mm.
then he asked me how I'm going. And I said, I'm tired, I think I said. And he said, I'm doing really well. And he said, oh, do you feel like the need to push at all? And I said, no, no. Um, and then within the next contraction, I started to push. Interestingly, I didn't have, like, I had an urge to push, but I didn't have that ejection reflex that Ellen
Ah,
had. Like,
yeah,
and I'd since read that once the baby's bum is out, it's all just conscious pushing
yeah.
from the, but the baby's head, his bum was coming down, but it wasn't out yet. And then, yeah, so started pushing, and Dr. Pesha suggested the birth stool, which absolutely changed the game. I love that. It was sparkly purple, this birth stool, and it was just unbelievable. I sat down and grabbed onto the handles and just pushed straight away. Like I just felt um this freedom to push, and then I could like pull up and push him out. And I remember just being in, I think that was I was in my element then because it felt like I could actually do something.
Yeah. You, rather
Um,
than hanging on for dear life, you're
yeah,
actually
exactly.
behind what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heard
Um,
women say that.
and then he got the Dr. Pesha got the mirror, so I could see his little bum. It was amazing.
Oh,
Um, and there was some coaching there, which was necessary because I didn't have a lot of that ejection
hmm.
reflex, and I was responding really well to his coaching. He was telling me to, because I was screaming outwards, he was telling me to scream inwards and down.
Mm.
And so I pushed for half an hour, and I only pushed for half an hour in the end. So at the very last minute, everything was going well, and And when his body came out, he must have appeared quite flat. He
Hmm.
was, and sometimes this can happen with breech.
Yeah.
Um, there was a lot of meconium, which is normal with breech. It's not as
Mm.
much of a concern because the bum's being squeezed as it comes out.
Yeah.
Um, and he said, Dr. Pesha said to me, you need to get up onto the bed, like, and he was urgent about it. He's like, quickly. And so I got up on the bed on my back, and after reading the discharge notes, he did like a couple of shoulder maneuvers, but it was not
Yeah.
internal.
Yeah.
Honestly, did not like if it was not like a vacuum or
No. Yeah.
a technology assisted. It was very minor. And then he just like got Elliot and like flopped him onto my tummy, and he was pretty white. And I just remember being like, like I'm off this bus now. It's immediate switch off. It's amazing. And just like having all the beautiful oxytocin. Um, Elliot was not doing too great though. He
Mhm.
was having trouble breathing. He had, I think, taken in some of the meconium into his lungs, so he did have to go um, straight and have some breathing assistance.
Yeah.
So the pediatric team were there. I was very protected by the hormones at that point. Like
Mm.
not being able to be with him straight away was something that I grieved afterwards. Like you are very protected
Yeah.
with the hormones in that. Um, and yeah, he had to be in NICU for a while.
Hmm.
Um, for for 5 days in the end, we had to stay in at Westmead
Mm.
Hospital. He had a bit
And
of
it
a
was
infection.
meconium ingestion.
They don't know. There was a bacterial infection marker that was positive, and um, yeah, it wasn't a lot of meconium that he took into his lungs. There was some there, but
Mm.
yeah, it was an infection that he could have had if it was cephalic. It was just
Yeah,
one of those things.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
meconium ingestion as well is something that can happen with any birth.
yeah,
You know, that is an amazing story.
yeah. It feels really amazing. Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself, Paris?
So I think it confirmed for me that I can do hard things. It was not nice, but it was also really humbling experience because I was
Mm.
thinking, look, I've done a lot of like endurance events in my life. I wonder how I'll fare with birth. And it was a very humbling experience. It sort of
Mm.
does break you down to your human core. And it was a beautiful thing to feel that softness in me and acceptance in me during birth. It taught me a lot about patience, and that came from the labor as well of yeah, patience and acceptance that I can move through really hard things. Um, and yeah, it ended up being this very spiritual experience for me in the end, even though I had not the plan, it didn't adhere to my exact plan of going into the birth center having a
Mm.
cephalic birth. Um, but it was almost like because he was breech and because I was put in a different environment with different medical staff that I weren't familiar with, that added to the challenge and added to my learnings as well.
Mm.
So yeah, I think like for anyone who all of a sudden is met with the possibility that their perfectly articulated birth plan is not going to happen,
Mm.
you can still get your birth values met, and it can still be a really empowering experience, even more so because there is an extra lesson there in acceptance of it
Mm.
not going to
Mm.
the plan that you had.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think it taught me a lot, and
Jane Hardwick Collins says birth is a teacher.
yeah,
And I love that metaphor. I think it's very true. And I love what you've talked about the humbling.
Mm.
Um, it's humility is something that reminds us of our vulnerabilities and our humanness and our imperfections, and that's a really important developmental milestone for us to hit. And having a child, like the pregnancy, the birth process, parenting, it can cut you off at the knees. You can be very accomplished in your career and doing amazing things, and then you have a child, you feel like you're back in kindergarten. But there's great, deep, profound wisdom in that process of being humbled by your children, by the mystery, by the fact that we can't control everything. And I think you've described there a lot of lessons, such wisdom in this story, people. Please, I'm glad you've made it to the end. It's a long one, but worth every word, because Parris has really touched on the process of being responsible and doing what we can where we have agency, and then ultimately surrendering into the mystery and allowing ourselves to be humbled by whatever the path delivers and whatever gets awakened within you. Nothing is ever in vain. Nothing is ever, like, everything is valid and is inviting you to learn. So do you want to
That's
finish with any?
beautifully put. I'm going to use that language. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad you joined in on the humbling. I think that was a big thing.
Yeah, it is. And like, parenting continues to humble you.
Yeah.
I'm nearly 30 years in and I'm still being humbled by my kids, quite quite harshly sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm about to become a grandmother in March.
Oh,
So,
wow.
that's a whole other world of mystery as well. And knowing how to support my daughter-in-law and my son through that process is something I've got to continue to learn. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I would
huge.
I would just say as well,
Yeah.
add to that, it don't always take things as they are presented to you, sort of
Mm,
interrogate things a little bit. Like it
yeah,
was, there's a lot of ways that you can do things, and people bring their own personal experience and fears to everything. So
exactly.
yeah.
Well said. Beautiful. So, on that note, thank you for joining us again for the Transform Your Birth podcast. I'm so very proud of this podcast. It is a wonderful way to learn about birth through storytelling and the wisdom that's inherent in the process. So, share it with people who you know would appreciate it. It's certainly, yeah, it's a labor of love, and I'm very, very proud. And I'm so grateful to you, Parris, for coming on and sharing this amazing story. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again.